important so that you can add your preferences, add your references. So whatever you like and dislike, you can let your agents and LLM knows it. And it's not just focused on your preferences. It can also be related to your application, right? On application level, you need certain pre-memory that has to be fetched to your agent so that it remembers that particular context and it can fetch whenever it is relevant. So add and fetch, it goes hand in hand, and memory can be a better context engineering workflow that you can have, because nowadays people are not just focusing on prompt engineering, they're also focusing on context engineering, where memory is a very critical component along with RAG and other details system prompt that we have. So yeah, memory is very important to have personalized responses over generic response, because we love personalized, not generic.
Yeah, so memory layer is important, as you said, because we have to keep track of the context and to make sure that the things are, I mean, the agents can keep track of us from time to time for the things that we have.
Correct, it should remember me, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so for next questions, we will a little more community-oriented. So how do you proceed with building projects, like as a developer, or maybe during you are in a community or something like that?
All right, so when it comes to building projects, since I like contributing to open source, it was not easy for me to directly jump into open source, right? Because when you contribute to open source, you need to have specific tech stack that you are already familiar with, right? You learn Python, and after Python, you experiment with a bunch of frameworks. So I started off with Fast API, you have Django, then you have React Flask. And once I had those fundamentals, then you had something related to TensorFlow. Because once I got into TensorFlow and PyTorch, I recognized that, okay, this is one domain I want to be in. I want to contribute more on the deep learning side. So now, what are the ways you can build projects? I usually keep this in two workflows. One is for those who wants to get into the research side. One is to those who wants to get into the engineering side. So let me focus on engineering side. Typically, what you're supposed to do is, whenever you're building projects as a fresher or as a student, you can try to read engineering blog articles. Every single startup, or most of the startup and companies, they do have their engineering blog articles. Say Netflix, then you have AWS who have their blogs, you have Google who have their blogs. And apart from that, you can also have Pinterest, you have Uber, right? So this company, they try to write engineering blog article where they talk about their architecture, how they build their systems. They'll write about the tech stack that they have used. They'll write about the concept they have used. They'll write all the details, and some of the startup also open source their code base, right? So what you can do is pick an industry. Let's say you want to pick education, right? And once you pick education, try to understand what are the companies or startup who are working in education space. Let's say Duolingo, right? Now what you will do, you have industry, which is domain, education. Then you have company, which is Duolingo. Try to read their engineering blog article, where you have to understand what are the different case studies, what are the different use cases. One case study can be personalizing the learning platform so that you can have better translation. One more can be how do you repeat words. So if you have used Duolingo, same words is repeated multiple times. So for the same words, how do you generate different exercises? So try to read this article, try to come up with the case study, try to come up with the use cases. So if you are stuck in all this process, you can use Gemini deep research. If not, you can also use something like Perplexity, get the engineering blog articles in your domain, and then ask LLM itself to generate different case studies and different use cases. For every case study and use case, try to have a problem statement. And if you're not able to come up with the problem statement, try to join hackathons, get the information from the hackathons, get the problem statement, and then start building it. So when you start building it, try to refer the engineering blog articles, what tech stack they have used, what is the workflow. So create the flow chart. So picking an industry, reading the engineering blog article, then picking the case study and use cases. For every use case, create a flow chart. Try to understand the user journey, what the user will use. And once you understand the flow chart, then start building one piece at a time. That is a very good project that you can have. So refer to engineering blog articles, get those case studies, get those sub-use cases, build a flow chart. That is your good project that you can do. And this also makes sense because these projects are actually built by companies. And most of the engineering blog articles, they have future steps. They have next steps. So you can include those next steps within your code bases, which is a better project that you can add in your resume. So yeah, that will be my entire flow. On the research side, instead of reading research articles, which is your instead of engineering blog articles, you can read research papers. Try to replicate the research paper. You have pseudocode. Sometimes most of the research paper concept is already open sourced. So for researchers, you can read research papers, and on the engineering side, you have engineering blog articles. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Tarun. So I've heard you have mentioned about open source initiatives several times. Can you give some suggestions for the community to start with, and something like that? And also you mentioned about hackathons.
Correct.
Yeah, can you mention a bit about that?
Yeah. So when it comes to hackathons, this is one good area where you can experiment with different problem statements, because as a beginner, when you start working on any problem statements, you'll be like, hey, I'm not sure if this problem statement makes sense or not. So try to be in any hackathons, at least get that participation, because most of the time winning is obviously very important, but if you participate and if you learn in that particular journey, that's even much better, right? So hackathons, probably I joined to understand the problem statements, try to build around those problem statements. Once you get that confidence, right? At the end of the day, confidence is what builds a particular developer. So I used to join hackathons just to get that confidence so that I can contribute to open source. So I used to get the problem statements, try to build smaller pieces of code. So for most of the time, when I say problem statement, it is easier statement, but how do we proceed to the execution phase? Since I come from the AI background, I usually used to check Kaggle, and you also have GitHub. So my first preference was Kaggle. I get the data set, read how other people write the code, because in Kaggle also you have hackathons. Kaggle is also a Google product, right? So go to Kaggle, take a database and check how other people write the code. So you just have to use the filter, check the most voted notebooks. Try to just copy paste what they have done. So copy paste 1 or 2 notebooks. Then third notebook is something that you have to try by your own, right? So when you try by yourself, you will see how to combine how other people have written their code. So this is what will be very helpful in hackathons, because in hackathons, most of the data set, similar data set is available on Kaggle. And when you see how other people wrote the code, you will have understanding of the algorithms. You will have understanding of the frameworks to use. So the processes, problem statement, and also get the resources. Try to get the frameworks that are very useful in the entire journey. So once you refer to Kaggle and get the code bases, you're already in a good shape to write your own code, right? Because now you know how other people wrote the code. Now that you have joined hackathons, you have got the problem statement, you have built your project, you have the confidence, what are the next steps, right? You can't do hackathons every single day. You need to have a linear flow so that you keep on upgrading yourself every single day. So this is where open source initiatives are very important. One of my favorite is Google Summer of Code, because I've been part of GSoC for 2 consecutive years. Have a solid proposal. So when I say proposal, first check the organizations. Once you check the organization, make the list of the projects that you want to contribute, right? And give a confidence score. So if I select 3 organizations, and for 3 organizations, I have 5 projects that I've selected. Am I confident enough to contribute to this project? I'll mark myself from 0 to 10. And if this project has more score, then what I'm supposed to do? In GSoC, you can only apply for 3 projects. So whichever project has more score, what I will try to do, I will build similar projects. So if I have X, let's suppose I have Redden Lab as my organization, I will pick 2 projects which make sense, which I am confident enough to contribute. So now if it is something related to fine tuning, because I contributed to fine tuning project, I will build something on similar lines. Now I have 3 projects which are similar, which will go to my resume or proposal that you are creating for your Google Summer of Code. Now this proposal will make more sense because you are confident enough in that project, and you also have 3 similar projects in that particular, what you call. You have one project, you have 3 similar projects which you can pitch. You can tell mentors, hey, see, this is your project and I'm a good person. I have already built something on the similar lines, and I know what are the challenges and I know what are the future steps, and I am the right candidate. So Google Summer of Code definitely is one of the best initiatives that you can apply for. And then there are also other initiatives, like you have MLH Hacks. MLH Hacks also helps you in developing your projects and then open sourcing it. And then you have something called as Oktoberfest. So Oktoberfest can be your good starting point, but my own or my suggestion will be that don't contribute the documentation part as a beginner. Try to understand the software, try to use the framework, and once you start using the framework, try to see which part of the file that you can upgrade. So if you are working in agentic frameworks, if you see one tool calling is not making sense, go update the tool script. So everything is very simple. You just have to check the code base and get that confidence. And for building the confidence, build as much as projects possible. But I will only suggest try to apply for GSoC at least once. And once you get that failure point, don't stop. Try to contribute again next year. But yeah, similar projects and at least 4 to 5 PRs, pull requests, which will make much better profile for GSoC.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tarun. Do you have any last words for our participants in DevFest Hong Kong 2025?
One thing is be curious. When it comes to tech, there are multiple tools that you're seeing that is getting upgraded every single day, right? And there is also concept of fear. Hey, there is already AI who's doing much of the task, right? So try to be curious. Whenever a new concept comes out, try to see why this particular concept is in trend, right? For example, let's suppose MCP came out. There are many people who wants to get into MCP, who want to build their own MCP, but is it even making sense to build MCP in specific use cases? So you have to be curious to understand the problem statement. You have to be curious enough to understand what is the actual use cases of this tool. And then try to identify the edge cases, because all the tools that you use have specific edge cases to solve. So if you have the understanding of all these details, it will automatically get you the confidence, because at the end of the day, I believe if you are confident enough and if you are curious to know what are the new technologies, how to replicate it, how to play around with it, once you get that particular momentum, most of the things becomes, I won't say it is simple, but most of the things will become much clear rather than being basic enough, because at the end of the day, you have to end that fear rather than just focusing, hey, this came out, that came out. So get the confidence, try to be curious, and just make sure whatever tech you use, you play around with it, build very fun projects, because I only believe if you build good projects and if you are into open source, you will never have to fear anything. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tarun, for joining the Creative Studio, and hope to see you again very soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining.